What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswaves. So a week or so ago, of course, we had that odd controversy, that weird story about the Xbox Series X getting hot, and then there were some stories asking if it was overheating and all these things. Well, the preview embargo went up for everyone who has a preview unit, and the thing that a lot of people decided to do was check the temperatures of the system and post their results. So we'll go over some of those here because the system might actually be running a bit cooler than you were expecting. Oh, and we get to talk about the PlayStation 5 user interface, the user experience, because in roughly a 10 or so minute demo that they showed, we got to see all kinds of really cool features Sony came up with for the PlayStation 5. And speaking of the PlayStation 5, I also wanted to show you guys a really cool example of some of the fast loading that we can expect and how it can even influence some of the gameplay changes going into next year, after Game Informer showed off more gameplay of Spider-Man Miles Morales. And again, there's a really neat transition, really cool example in there of that fast loading. Guys, if you enjoyed these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're brand new here, hit that red subscribe button down below. And we're gonna start today with the launch lineup for the Xbox Series X and the Series S. Of course, that is coming out next month. And people are curious as to which games will be there at launch for smart delivery or being optimized. Well, Microsoft released this list here of 30 games, and you could see more being added as we get closer to launch, as developers start to release patches and optimize their different games. And you know what, looking at this list, yeah, they're definitely missing Halo Infinite. We will say that. Look, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I'm sure that will be a pretty cool game to check out. Watch Dogs Legion, of course. Those are games that will just benefit from the more powerful hardware inside of the Series X. And looking down this list, to be honest, the game that I'm most interested in right this second is Yakuza Like a Dragon, which is unfortunate because there's nothing really from Microsoft that we're not already playing. I mean, Gears Tactics, I guess, is going to be on the console for the first time now, but that's been on PC for a little while. It's really going to come down to you wanting to get the Series X to play your games with a higher frame rate, better resolution, faster loading times. It's more of an upgrade now, and I'm hoping as we get into next year and we start seeing Halo Infinite again and it comes out, we'll start to get some of those games to take advantage of the hardware from Microsoft's first party. Also, do you remember Digimon Survive? That, of course, we saw this in Famitsu, and it was talked about as this tactical Digimon RPG, but we still weren't 100% sure as to what it was gonna be. Looks like we're gonna have to wait a bit longer, as it was originally planned for this year. It looks like it is being delayed into next year. They posted this up on Twitter. It says, the Digimon Survive team would like to extend our thanks to fans from around the world for their support during development, especially in these difficult times. We had originally planned to launch Digimon Survive in 2020, but current world events have shifted our development timing, and we have made the difficult decision to push Digimon Survive's launch to 2021. We thank you all for your continued patience as we work to create a fun and engaging tactical RPG game along with a memorable story for Digimon fans. We will share some exciting updates for Digimon Survive in spring 2021, so please stay tuned for more information. And look, we've seen this over the last 5 to 6 months, right? Games getting pushed, games getting delayed, struggles in development with remote work and all of this due to COVID-19. So it's not too surprising to see this necessarily, mostly because we're midway through October and we still don't have a release date for it. It was supposed to come out in 2020. Yeah, I think the writing was on the wall for that one, that it was going to be pushed to next year. They say spring 2021 is when we'll hear more updates. I'm thinking this is going to be roughly a 10-month delay, maybe over the summer, maybe next August, September, somewhere in there, we could finally see it come out. But I mean, this is a game that probably will benefit from the extra development time, and Digimon fans, I'm sure, will wait if the game is really good. So we'll see what happens with Digimon Survive. Look forward to that, hopefully in 2021. Oh, and we just talked about the launch day games for the Xbox Series X and the Series S and how it's going to be more of an upgrade for the games you're currently playing. Well, one of those upgrades in the form of a feature of Quick Resume is something that people seem really interested in. But what happens if, say, the power goes out or you just unplug your system without even thinking about it to move it? What happens to everything that you had in kind of those slots for Quick Resume? Well, this tweet here, Alana Pierce did test that, leaving the Xbox Series X unplugged for 24 hours, coming back, plugging it in, and everything was still there. This seemed to surprise a lot of people, but the way that it does Quick Resume, where it actually stores the information on the SSD that's in the system, that makes sense, because when you turn the system back on through a power cycle, it can then go back and look for anything you had kind of saved on the SSD for Quick Resume. And it's a cool feature to see that, right? I mean, think about it. You can leave the system off for a while, a long time, and your game will still be there where you left off a week later, 2 weeks, a month later. So I do like Quick Resume. I don't know how much I'll use, like I don't think I'm gonna store 6 games on Quick Resume, but the idea of being able to jump between Halo if I'm playing that quite a bit and then like jump over to a single player game and then back when like some of my friends come back to play, like that is a cool idea, I would say, but to have it at least not erase everything when you unplug it is good. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. We're starting right away with the Xbox Series X and the temperature in the system. Keep in mind, this was a fairly large story. It was much bigger than it should have been because it all boiled down to, no pun intended there, just heat was coming out of the system. It seems like a hot system because heat is coming out of the system. It's not staying in the system on the chip, it's coming out of the system for some reason. That tends to be how these things work when there's a fan involved, but let's go back to this here because you can see Jeff Grubb posted up some of his results, and actually this Twitter account here did a much better job than Jeff. Jeff just kind of typed them out. He collected the data. That was the hard part, but they put it into a really nice looking chart for him. And that's from Xbox News. And we could see a couple comparisons here. The Xbox Series X with a max temperature of 50 degrees Celsius, 50.4, the Xbox One X at 54.5 degrees Celsius, and the PlayStation 4 Pro at 65 degrees Celsius. The average temperature, 47.7, 52.1, and 62.5. So this should be pretty impressive for the Series X, but I double checked with Jeff after checking through his article that he put up over VentureBeat and GamesBeat and all this. And it does appear that the way he measured this was through the exhaust. And look, that's what everyone was feeling, right? Like when they were like, wow, this system's hot, they weren't touching the heatsink inside. They weren't touching the chip. They had their hand around where air was being exhausted. So it makes sense that that's where you would measure. Austin Evans is something similar. He seemed to record like 53 degrees Celsius. He also went with some more of the stress tests, things that I would do. Like when I put a towel over the Switch, see if I get the thing to overheat. He put like a game case as an example over the top where it's trying to expel air, which that's the one thing I think could happen for a lot of people, because if you look at it, it's a flat surface on top, and I've dealt with a lot of people in game retail for like a decade, and yeah, that would probably happen. Yeah, so seeing that, and it was still okay, is pretty impressive for the system, but it's not just putting air out through the top, it's also gonna be pushing it out through any small area that it can, where there are like little cracks in like the plastic or the grooves or anything. It's putting air out anywhere possible, not just through the top. That's just the most obvious spot where it's gonna put the majority of the air out through. But yeah, it turns out the Series X isn't that hot. I mean, really, it's technically running cooler outside of the system, or at least around the exhaust vents, than the current gen platforms now, the One X and the PlayStation 4 Pro. And you know what? The PlayStation 5 probably will also. Now, I'm still curious because this is just the exhaust vents for all of them. And you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna take the thing apart, and I'm gonna try to get the probe as close as I can to the chip, whether it is in the heatsink, underneath the heatsink, or behind the board, right behind the chip. We'll find a good spot to really test the temperatures on this thing, because measuring from exhaust is one thing, but let's get into like that vapor chamber. Let's see if we can get by the chip and get a very, very accurate reading, at least as much as we can with a game console. And hey, so far at least it looks pretty good overall, I'd say. Next up, let's talk about the PlayStation 5 user experience. PlayStation released a trailer, a demo, like an hour after Newswave went up yesterday. Why not? And it was about 11 minutes long, and it basically took us on a little bit of a tour. I noticed there are still a few things they will have to show us, and they even mention it. Oh, we're not gonna look at that today. Well, maybe some other time. But from what they did show us, yeah, it looks pretty good. It looks like there's a lot going on. That's the one concern I have, at least like kind of the learning curve for the whole thing. But when they first log in, we have these cards, and they appear to be more or less, I guess, almost a history of what you're doing with different activities. For example, Sackboy, which was the game they were showing off, had instances where you could jump into a section of the game, and it would even estimate the amount of time that you had to do it. Like it was like 10 minutes is how long it'll take you, so you can kind of plan it out. Okay, do I have 10 to 15 minutes to sit down and beat this part? If you do, there you go, you can jump in and then jump right back out. I like that aspect because everything that they showed here during this user experience was speed, ease of access, quick. Like you can just get around really fast, you can jump into the game quickly, you can jump out of the game, save where you are. There's a lot going here for that quality of life feature. Now, they also show off different things where you can basically take different elements, like for example, someone else's screen where they're showing you what they're doing in the game, and snap it to different sections, picture in picture essentially. You can snap it to the side of your screen, it takes over that. It's kind of like what we had with the Xbox One, basically, when it first came out, right? Like Snap TV. And then you're still watching TV up there, but you're also playing your game here. However, this looks a little more intuitive, and it does look like it's going to involve more of the community around you, whether it is a way to look up hints that it seems the developers will be participating in and actually creating, not necessarily you going to YouTube for a video that's already been kind of bookmarked. It seems like it's all built in, and I guess depending if developers take advantage of it, they will have ways to give you hints and tricks and tips in video form that you can snap to like the side and watch as you're playing. That's actually pretty helpful. I like the idea of that to kind of help you through games. That way, because you think about it, someone might just get stuck and they just stop playing the game. And that doesn't help the developer at all who created that game because they want you to get through it. Not everyone is gonna go online and go to game FAQs or any of this stuff. Trust me, I've seen it. Some people just bring the game in and trade it in. No, seriously, that's it. They get stuck on a boss, like, I don't want to play it anymore. What else is there? They also showed off different things around that create button. Remember, we had seen that. We didn't really know too much about it outside of it being more of an advancement for the share button that is on the PlayStation 4 controller currently. And it looked pretty straightforward. Screenshots, of course, video clips. It's always also doing kind of that replay recording where it's recording in real time. You can go back and grab different things that you did in the game like 5 minutes ago or something like that. And then you can also take that clip and share it with a party that you're in, or you can share it with people on your friends list. And they also had voice to text, which is really cool dictation. So you can talk to your controller with the microphone and it will then type it out for you. So you don't have to sit there with the keyboard the whole time trying to make sure you get every little bit right. So there's a lot there, once again, for quick access, ease of use to get things done and then get back to playing the game. Now, I do still have some questions about that picture-in-picture mode, as that's something that people keep bringing up. Can we put any application there? Could you put Netflix there? Could you put YouTube there? It doesn't seem like it's every single one, as in the blog post, they mentioned that certain activity cards can be placed there. So it sounds like there will be a bit of a restriction on it, which is kind of a shame because, yeah, people might just want to watch YouTube while they're playing a game, and if they can do it on the same screen rather than have to sit next to a laptop or have your phone propped up or something, or just listen to it that way, I think that'd be really cool to have that. And maybe that's something that evolves over time. But then they went to the main menu, and I like it. It's the icons are very small and at the top. It's very minimal, really, if you look at it, and has plenty of room for whatever your background is, or hopefully themes and all of this that they eventually set up. The entire UI is set at 4K with HDR, which sounds obvious, but the Xbox Series X is 1080p, and that's kind of weird for the UI itself, since that's a more powerful system, but who knows there. That could be an update, though. Keep that in mind. That's something Microsoft has said. However, when they went over a few slots on the PlayStation 5 UI, the shop is built into it. That's amazing, because it's been an app this whole time on the PS4, and it's so slow. I am so happy to see that. They didn't scroll down. I was curious because we, of course, want to see how fast that shop actually loads when you start scrolling, because that is always the problem with the PlayStation 4. Once you get in there, you start scrolling, everything takes a while to actually get going. So I do like that it is part of just your overall user interface, and it's not something that has to go off separately. Overall, though, I like what I saw here. I think there's still some more things they're going to show us. They didn't really talk much about any kind of AI assistant. Maybe there isn't one there, or maybe they're still working to show off more of it. But I think right now, it looks like a solid user interface or user experience, as they keep saying it. I think at first it's going to take some getting used to, going from the PS4 to the PS5, but when you really get the hang of everything, it looks like there's a lot to take advantage of there, so exciting stuff. Next up, let's talk about that update 8.0 for PlayStation, seemingly getting prepped for the PlayStation 5, and there was something in there that seemed to frustrate and really annoy some gamers, and we're going to talk a bit about that just so you understand exactly what's going on here, because it seemed like some of the information was getting thrown around, it was incorrect, but let's talk a little bit about how Sony is going to allow other people to record your party chat and then basically tell on you if you say anything too bad. Here is some of the statement and the overall, I guess, the privacy policy, different things, of course, that people generally scroll right past. But take a look at this. This was part of that update from Sony. It says, please be aware that voice chats in parties may be recorded and sent to us by other users. By participating in voice chats, you agree to your voice being recorded. Now, Sony did clarify this a bit further when they updated the official blog post saying, following this update, users are seeing a notification about party safety and that voice chats in parties may be recorded. Voice chat recording for moderation is a feature that will be available on the PS5 when it launches and will enable users to record their voice chats on PS5 and submit them for moderation review. The pop-up you're seeing on PS4 right now is to let you know that when you participate in a chat with a PS5 user post-launch, they may submit those recordings from their PS5 console to Sony Interactive Entertainment. Okay, so basically Sony is not always recording your call. It's actually up to the other people, I guess, to decide if whatever you've said is offensive or it's harassment or any of this. They can then record it on the PS5 and send it in for moderation with Sony. And I guess then they'll decide if it warrants a ban of some kind or any of that. Whenever I play online with any kind of voice chat and someone's bugging me, annoying me, going over the top for reaction, just mute and just move. That's me anyway. I just mute and move on. I mean, if you're in a party chat, I'm trying to figure out how far this will actually go. If you're in a party chat, you've kind of already agreed to be in there with them, unless this is also in, say, Call of Duty, which is something that gets brought up a lot. There's the overall harassment, different things that can take place online when you do anything with voice chat. It's always out there, it seems, right? So I guess this way Sony is saying, well, rather than getting all these messages about how somebody is harassing, breaking terms of service, all of this, we'll just let them record it, they send it to us, and then we'll decide. Because that is something that would happen on the 360, by the way. There would be like false reports against people because you lost to them, and then they would get banned even though they didn't really say anything bad. But I guess in this instance, you can at least provide proof. I don't know. We'll see how far this really goes with Sony. Again, my stance is just mute and move on, for me anyway, because generally the match will be over in like 10 or 12 minutes and I'll kind of move on. But I guess this way you can technically tell on somebody that is harassing or being an overall pain in the voice chat when you're playing Call of Duty. In our last bit of news, let's talk about the PlayStation 5 load times. We know, we've heard about it. The SSD is super fast, right? But a lot of people are still waiting for that one big aha moment, that big example. You're like, whoa, that was pretty quick. Was that supposed to be a load screen? I can't tell. That is what we're really hoping we eventually see, is where we can't tell if there was supposed to be a load screen there or not because it was so quick, but it's something we feel like should have been loading in the past on older systems with these old mechanical hard drives. Check this footage out here. This was posted up by Game Informer for the Spider-Man Miles Morales preview that they are doing currently on the PlayStation 5, where they're showing off all these different pieces of gameplay, whether it's you're doing these stealth missions or you're swinging around the city itself. But there was one section that people noticed where it looks like Miles kind of exits a building through a pipe, and it seems to load the city in extremely fast. Now, if you played, of course, Spider-Man on the PS4, you go from the inside to the outside for different missions, and it'll have this load screen, and eventually you'll just end up outside. I have to still see if Spider-Man Miles Morales does that, or they've worked out a way for the engine to allow you to get outside very quickly. That's very possible. But yes, this looks pretty crazy overall. I mean, I keep watching this over and over again, and it does kind of feel like that aha moment, but it's gonna come down to those comparisons. I just wanted to show you guys this because this was really cool, caught me off guard, and again, it's that moment where you're like, okay, that's the SSD at work. That maybe would have been a load screen. It's kind of like when we saw Ratchet and Clank where they pull the dimensions and everything's changing around you. Now we're kind of seeing maybe how this can work into gameplay and things like Spider-Man 2 coming up, but let's see exactly how this fares on the PlayStation 4, because maybe it's the same thing. I doubt it. I think maybe there would be a load screen when you go through that pipe, or maybe that pipe isn't even there and you have to walk through the door very slowly, or you have to go through like a tunnel or something. We'll see. But yeah, keep that in mind with how fast it could potentially be loading there. And we'll finish up with a comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Jose saying, N7 Day is coming up. The Mass Effect Trilogy Remaster Remake could be announced then. Okay, so N7 Day, November 7th. People are still questioning why that's a thing, just to be honest, because like last year, nothing happened. And people were seriously writing articles about like, what does N7 even mean anymore? Should there even be an N7 Day because nothing happens? You know what? You might be onto something. They could still announce it November 7th and it not come out still till next year. If that is the case, they could announce it on November 7th though, and it come out later in November or even December. That's not a bad idea. However, I feel like we'd be setting ourselves up for disappointment expecting that. So I'm not gonna expect it, but That'd be a pretty cool surprise. November 7th, we'll keep an eye out. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Whether it's the PlayStation 5 user experience, what did you think about it? Whether it's the look, the faster load times, being able to jump in and out of games pretty quickly, even telling you how long it might take for you to finish that section up. Also, what about the temperatures around the Xbox Series X? I think they look pretty good and even cooler than some people were expecting after all of those headlines popped up. And then that little section in Spider-Man Miles Morales loading to the city in like a second, it seems. Pretty crazy stuff. Guys, have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.